Hi everyone, welcome to Again Craft. In this video I want to talk to you about 5 more things I wish I knew when I was starting out as an epoxy artist, woodworker, creator, something. These are the things I learned the hard way, and these are the things I never saw any tutorial go over. And trust me, I watched hundreds of videos on how to do resin, how to deal with woodworking, how to do epoxy woodworking, and this and that, and how to make a business out of it, and how to make money with it. Now, in this video, I collected out about 5 subjects or areas I wish I knew before I started out, because I usually experiment with shit, and I learn things the hard way, even if I read about it. But I just wanted to tell you about these 5 things. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it. Now, 5 things I wish I knew when I started my epoxy resin profession. I made a text file this time just to keep me on track, because ADHD squirrel brain is in operation. So first, epoxy heat viscosity. Basically, the more heat you apply to resin or epoxy, I will use these 2 words interchangeably in the future. If you want to know what's the difference, check out my other video about it. So basically, epoxy heat viscosity, the more heat you apply to resin, the more viscous it will become, so more watery. It will become more watery, liquidy, and the hotter the ambient temperature you're working with resin, the more flowy it will be. And I learned this the hard way when I was doing a flat coat on a table I never done before, and I applied a heat gun to it, trying to cure it because it was running off too fast. And technically I heated it up to, I don't know, 40-45 degrees Celsius. So it was hot to the touch, and the fumes were coming off, and everything was watery, and I wasted a bunch of resin. Like, guys, I think I wasted about 7 kilos on that pour, which is insane, I know, but I wasted a lot of epoxy on that one. And yeah, so the more heat you apply, the more viscous, or less viscous. Anyway, the more watery it will become, and it will dry. It will suddenly cure faster. The second thing is, epoxy deforms due to heat for 2 months after curing. That's a minimum. And epoxy shrinks while curing. So that's another thing I wish I learned before I started out my epoxy business, is that even if resin is cured and your piece is cured for 2 months or 3 months or whatever, if you put it out in the sun, it will deform. It will start like melting slowly. I don't know if it happens over years, so after years of curing, but it will definitely happen after months of curing. Doesn't matter what resin you use, doesn't matter what hardener you use in it. It's just the nature of it, okay? And yeah, and also it doesn't matter if they say it will completely cure in 4 weeks, and when it's cured, it won't budge. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Heat is just that motherfucker. So yeah, it will deform, and also it shrinks. So over time, and I say over time, I mean like after pouring 6 months, right? 6 months after pouring, resin will shrink. And how I know that is a very simple fact of, I was making a tabletop, right? And I had resin in the middle, and I sanded it, flattened it, everything was beautiful. Waited a couple of months, then I give it to my friend as a present. And I visited my friend after about 6 months, and I touched the table, and the resin was smaller, and the wood didn't grow, wood didn't get thicker or swollen. the resin shrunk. And I learned that resin will shrink over time because the complete curing process of epoxy could take up to a year. As it releases, so the chain reaction of the hardening, it becomes fast, it speeds up to the point when it's hard, and then after, for months, the molecular chain reaction of bonding will still happen, and the hardener will evaporate from the resin. Thus, it will lose material thickness, it will lose material, thus it will become smaller. So it will shrink. When you do a piece, make sure you give some space for shrinkage. And ever since that, I need to pay attention when I'm finishing a piece to have a little bump in the resin for it to shrink to level. But we're talking about like fractions of a millimeter, but you can feel it with your fingertip. One more thing I learned, and this is number 3, is pine resin. Okay, so resin in pine or pine cones or spruce, you know, the everyday Home Depot wood you can buy. I think you can see it on the top shelf in the middle. All that. Spruce, this is spruce. So on the top shelf, you can see spruce. You can buy this in the average Home Depot or B&Q or whatever you have in your country, Bauhaus, or I can't recall anymore. Anyway, so this average softwood, soft timber, spruce or pine, it has pine resin in it. Now, pine resin, when you put it in epoxy, reacts to the hardener and accelerates the curing process to a level of critical stage, and it can cause flash cure even when you are not pouring too deep, and even when you are having the ambient temperature very low. And the older the pine is, the faster the reaction gets. I don't know why. Probably the resin is more concentrated in that. But basically the hardener in my epoxy resin and some of the other epoxy resins I tested, and I saw other people test in the resin epoxy Facebook forums. They're just shell shocked because of the random flash curing they get, and they say, "Well, I did everything according to the book. I did the depth correctly, the temperature was right, and I have a flash curing, and everything bubbled up and cracked, and what the hell is going on? And I'm confused." Listen, the resin in your wood, what you used, has reacted to the hardener, not the epoxy, the hardener, and it sped up the heat. So basically it created more heat, and that caused the epoxy in the chain to flash cure. So yeah, I wish I knew that before. How I learned this, the first experiment I done, I put pine cones in epoxy, and it was the middle of December, 10 degrees outside Celsius, 10 degrees outside, and it was 10 degrees in my workshop too. And I poured the resin, I did everything correctly, and suddenly started to give off this noise of, you know, when you open a can of cola, that fizzy sound. Man, it was fizzing, it was smoking. We had to take it outside, and it was still fizzing and smoking. And I thought I overpoured, but I checked the box and it wasn't overpoured. So next time, a month later, I sliced up a pine beam, and I made cookies out of it, like these circles. And I put it in a tray, and I poured resin over it. And just to stabilize it, I poured like this thick. And the whole thing started to boil again. And I couldn't figure out, why does it boil again? So I did one more try, and I forgot what was it. Anyway, I poured another one, and it started to boil again. So the variable in all three pours was high resin content of the pine or the spruce I was using. I wish someone knew that, told that to me before. So if you work with other kind of resins in your epoxy resin, make sure you test it out because it will react funny with the hardener. One more thing I didn't know about, and it was an extremely important lesson, and I learned this from you guys actually, from the comment section of my rant video, that epoxy can be absorbed through skin. And some of you have experience of epoxy allergy, and some of you told me to be extremely fucking careful cleaning my hand off with alcohol, because alcohol dissolves the epoxy to a very fine particle size, and it can absorb through skin much faster, and you won't get a reaction. You won't get a reaction for like, I don't know, several months or years even, and suddenly your body will become allergic to it, and your fucking skin will fucking rot off, like chemical burn wise, like when you have the bad eczema and shit. And I learned this from you guys, and yeah, so now I'm using gloves wherever I can, and I'm using vinegar to wash off epoxy from my hand instead of alcohol. And I advise you to wear proper PPE and use vinegar instead of alcohol to clean your hands. Okay. Also, I wish I knew this when I started out, because then I would be more careful about this. And one more thing I learned recently from one of you as well. One of your advice was to try Elmer's glue instead of using tape on the bottom of a flat coat. Just spread thick Elmer's glue on it, do the flat coat, and to remove the bubbles or remove the droplets, you just peel the Elmer's glue from the bottom of the piece. And I watched a few videos about it, and I find it extremely, extremely useful. So from now on, I'm gonna try to source school's glue or Elmer's glue here in Greece, and I'm gonna have it in the workshop as well. It's a cellulose-based glue. It's organic. You can eat it. It's very tasty. You can put it on a sandwich. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Please don't do that. But yeah, I'm gonna have that as well in the shop and in my normal workflow. I try to collect 5 or 10 useful informations once in a while. And if you have some advice or tips you have learned, please leave it in the comment section, because I'm gonna curate some of that in the next video, because Agina Craft is a community, and it's where we all hang out, where we all makers hang out and share tips and advices, and I want to give a voice to every single one of you. And I'm so sorry, I had a great friend come in, and she left me this piece of olive block, which I need to save, so I'm gonna work on that over the weekend. But I forgot, where was I? Seriously. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about leave your advice, things you learned, and things you wish you knew when you started out in a comment section. And when I make the next video, I'm gonna curate some of those, because Agina Craft is a community of makers where we all share our experiences, ask questions, and solve each other's problems. If you want to support me or the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like the video if you want to, or comment. That helps to appease the machine god. I am, as a good tech priest, like to appease the machine god. If you know, you know. If you want to help me more directly, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. That will help me to pay the bills of this place and everything. And you can, what else you can do? Oh yeah, you can go on aginacraft.com. That's my web shop. I have all my shit up there, which I'm willing to sell. And I think I have a pretty good price on shipping as well. So if you're from New Zealand or Australia, the shipping costs $10-20 tops. And it gets there safe, tracking and everything. So yeah, that's how you can support me. the channel. Please support each other. Be awesome. Be excellent to each other, because this is what we have. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys got something out of this video. And I saw a gentleman riding a scooter with the dog standing on his back like that. Egina. It's a weird village, but I love him. Bye. That's the best goodbye I ever done.